So a few months ago, I made a 6-inch boning knife for my friend Ben Forbes, and today we're going to be starting a new knife for him. It's going to be a breaker knife, so larger in size, and it's still going to have a guard, but it's going to have an extended heel so that you can use it as a chef's knife and as a breaker. Usually I see them around 8 to 10 inches or so, but this one's going to be a little bit larger at 11 inches just about. And the blade's already been profiled, so next is going to be heat treating so that the steel can actually get hard and hold an edge. This blade has already been profiled. We can do the heat treating so that the steel actually gets hard and can hold an edge. Heat treating is broken down into 3 major parts: normalizing, hardening, and tempering. Normalizing, or thermal cycling, is taking it to a high temperature and letting it cool slowly in air. This dissolves all the large carbides, relieves the stress in the steel, reduces the grain size, and gets it ready for hardening after. What you're seeing here is the steel cooling down from the high temperature, and it looks like the sort of shadow is rippling across the blade. This is called recalescence. What's actually happening is when you take the steel up to a high enough temperature, the microstructure undergoes a phase change, and then when it cools, it goes through another phase change. The temperature is actually increasing again because of an increase in entropy during that phase change. I normalized the blade 3 times at a slightly cooler temperature each time. This will reduce the grain size of the steel structure and increase strength. After it's been normalized, it's ready for hardening. This is the big moment where the steel actually gets much harder and can hold an edge. Just like before, when you bring the steel up to a high temperature and then cool it back down, it undergoes a phase change. However, when you quench the steel, it cools fast enough that it transforms into a hard structure called martensite. A lot can go wrong in this short amount of time since there's so much stress involved with the quench. It can warp, it can twist, it can crack. Hopefully, we've done everything right and it comes out in one piece. At this point though, it's really hard, a little too hard. We could easily snap the blade like a piece of glass. The last step before moving on is tempering the blade to reduce that brittleness and increase the toughness. We're just warming it up to around 400 degrees Fahrenheit for a couple hours, and there's no footage of that, but you'll just have to trust us that we put it in the oven. With the blade heat treated, we can start grinding the blade to its final geometry. It needs to be a medium weight grind. It doesn't need to be so thick for what Ben uses it for, and going too thin makes it too flexible. Most of the rough grinding we do is done with a 36 grit ceramic belt, but here I'm freehand grinding with an 80 grit belt to tune up the geometry. I'm constantly feeling the blade and the edge to get it closer to where I want it. The edge should be fairly thin to cut well, but still be robust enough that it can withstand some of the hard use. The handle on this one will match the previous boner we made for him last year. The material is black canvas micarta. It looks good, is fairly easy to grind and finish, and is one of the most durable materials out there. I scribe the lines, cut it on the bandsaw, drill my holes for the pins, and then it's almost ready to be glued. The final step before gluing is just making sure that the finish on the blade is good enough. Since this is more of a hard use knife, we're doing a machine finish on it. This was actually trickier than I thought because I don't normally do machine finishes that often, and I'm not really set up for it. I had to backstep a little bit, establish a good foundation on the blade, and then go back to the final belts. For comfort, the spine is rounded and polished. Now we glue the handle together. There are 3 pins total, 1 mosaic pin in the front for looks, and 2 hidden pins in the back to keep things together. All surfaces are cleaned well and then coated in epoxy. Clamp it up, clean the excess, and let it cure until the next day. Finally, the handle is shaped. I grind off all the excess and square up the profile, and then cut in my main angles for the handle. Everything is eyeballed and freehanded. I check back and forth for symmetry, feel for comfort, and then finish out the contours. It needs to be grippy, comfortable, and it needs to look good. Now it's done, and now we can sharpen it and deliver it to Ben.
This video is going to go weird pretty soon. Yeah. Might have to put this on. Never mind. So what do you want to talk about, Don?
I don't fucking know.
You want to talk about your knife? So far, 6-inch boner's getting all the fun. Being small, you can get into spots nobody else can. 6-inch guy gets all the action. Lots of motion, never stops, can go all day. Bigger's not always better, Don, okay?
Thank you for that.
The big guy, he's like a one and done, literally. Like, I mean, look at how many times has this guy seen action today. He's big, he's beautiful, he's sexy, but he doesn't get used all that much. I hope my mom never sees this video.